Hey guys, it's Jazz here. I wanted to basically make a short video on how to use Duolingo effectively so that you're able to get the most out of it and maybe basically learn your language a little bit faster. So there's a TED Talk that I watched recently, which I actually have linked below. The presenter, he basically is a polyglot, and he was talking about different ways to learn a language a lot easily. So a lot of the things that he mentioned I fully agree with, because I am a polyglot and I understand the demeanor of having to learn a language over and over and over again. I've learned 8, technically 9, because I took an introductory course for something else, but basically practically 9. So I know what it's like to learn a language over and over again. So once you kind of get past the 3rd language, you start kind of getting to a point where if you want to learn more languages, it gets easier because you've already kind of had experience. Yeah, it's kind of like how when people say that it's easier to learn a 3rd language than it is to learn a 2nd language, because by the 3rd language you actually have had experience with learning a new language. So that's basically my point on that. So the first thing that I have for you that he mentioned that I completely agree with is you have to skip anything that's irrelevant. Keep it relevant. So with Duolingo is that one of the best things I think is about Duolingo is it's very virtual, because they really keep in mind that people are at different levels. So if you are a person that, let's say you want to learn Spanish, but you've taken Spanish in the past, you know something, you're not like completely like, I don't know anything, I've never learned anything in Spanish in my whole life, then okay, it makes sense. So then like the very first lessons, I've noticed is like they'll give you like pictures and it's like vocab words. It's like man, woman, dog, cat, milk, apple. Like they give you these vocab words. Personally, I don't really teach vocabulary because I feel like that's just words you don't know anything to do with, but it's a good start for some people because some people really like vocabulary. And vocabulary, depending on, like if that's something that you really like doing, you can actually learn, the genders, especially if your language has genders. For example, with German, they have masculine, feminine, and neutral. So you want to learn your words, you want to learn objects with their corresponding articles. So that's where I think it's very much helpful. So let's say you already know something. There's a feature, I believe it's like a little dumbbell at the bottom of the screen, and you can take a quiz or a test or something like that. But it's basically a quiz. If you miss less than 5 questions, then you can move on to the next levels. Because the thing is that if you're sitting there and it's like, oh, you can't move on until you finish this, and you're like literally sitting there thinking, I've already learned this before, I know this. Like I know how to say hombre y mujer. Like I know the difference between man and a woman. I don't need to like make a sentence saying she is, like you can like put together sentences that says she is a woman, he is a man. Like we don't need to do that. That's not relevant. So if that's not relevant to you, then you can take that little quiz and you can move on. Which I think is very, 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 very helpful. So, because for me, when I started learning Spanish and I used Duolingo as a tool, I was like, I don't really want to waste time on these words. Because like I grew up watching Dora the Explorer, so I don't need to learn these things again. So for the people who do need to learn that, go right ahead. But for those of you who want to accelerate a little bit faster, you can take those quizzes. And the thing about it is you can take as many times as you want. So if you're like, I missed more than 5, but I really want to move on because I still know, like sometimes like I understand that there are some questions where I know for a fact that I never use, like, like how there's nuances. And I know that Duolingo is meant to give you like a basis, like this is what, they want to teach you the correct Spanish, so to say. You can skip that if you're like, I know I never say this or I never say it like this or something like that. You can do that. You're more than welcome to do so. And then the second thing I will say is that you can learn languages in other languages. I think that's really cool because Duolingo understands that people around the world want to learn other languages through their own native language, not just learning English to French and English to Korean or English to Swahili or English to Arabic. They want to learn languages through their own native language. They don't want to have to learn English in order to learn this language that they want to learn. They can learn it through something else. If you are multilingual or if you are already bilingual, for example, you have an option to learn a language through another language. So for me, when I started learning Spanish and I was using Duolingo as a tool, I was learning it from French to Spanish because I've been speaking French for a very long time. And the thing about learning a language is it's not you just learn a language and it's like, all right, I'm done. I'll use that whenever I feel like I need to. No, you use it or you lose it. So it's helpful if you already speak French, for example, you can learn Spanish and be able to say, okay, well, I learned this, but I want to maintain this. I'm learning this language, but I want to maintain this language. So I can kill two birds with one stone. Also, when I was learning Catalan, when I first started learning Catalan, I was learning it Spanish to Catalan because, for those of you who don't know, Catalan is a language that is very much closely connected to Barcelona. It's spoken in that area within Spain. And also, historically speaking, it used to be spoken in parts of France before people were they're like, oh, only a third of people in our country speak French. It's like, no, we have to go purge everything else, But before then, Catalan was actually an indigenous language that was spoken, or a minority language that was spoken in France. So it's kind of been condensed more so to the Barcelona area. So when I was learning that, I was thinking, well, it's present in Spain, so I want to compare Spanish to Catalan. So I learned, I was again maintaining what I knew about Spanish, and then I was applying it to Catalan, and I was able to compare the difference. Because the other thing is that because both languages are very similar, I was able to guess. I don't know, it's almost like cheating because their languages are very, very, very similar. So I was like, oh, okay, this looks like this, so this is the answer to the question. Technically, for me, cheating is basically when you use English, because English is my native language. So my main goal is to not use my native language as much. I'm already using my native language in these videos and who I talk to on a daily basis in America. So if I can use that less when I'm working on languages, on the other languages that I want to maintain, then that's helpful. So use that as a feature. If you are bilingual, or if you or let's say you want to learn two languages at the same time, why not? Go crazy if you really want to. And you have that feature. And then my third thing is just don't rely on Duolingo to learn everything. Use it as a tool concurrently with everything. I feel like if you're going to use Duolingo, make sure you're using Duolingo in addition to doing other things. Because as I've always talked about, is that you want to use your languages in every aspect of your life. So for me, if I am listening to Duolingo, I want to make sure that after I've done 15 to 30 minutes of of practicing on Duolingo, I'm gonna go and watch a movie on Netflix in the target language. My phone, for example, is never in English. I always change it all the time depending on who I'm talking to and what language I want to focus on. So I'm always going to be changing my language depending on what I am wanting to focus on. When I went to Mexico 2 years ago, I changed my phone into Spanish. And I went to France the year before that, I changed it into French. You want to make language a part of your life. So don't rely on, okay, I did 15 to 20 minutes of Duolingo and now I'm going to go back to my daily life. No, you need to take what you're learning and put that into your daily life. Listen to a podcast. And when I mean podcast, don't just listen to a podcast that teaches you a language. You want to listen to a podcast that is in that language and they're talking about really good things. You're talking about whatever their topics are. For example, there is a podcast that's called Cafe Brazil. It's basically a podcast that is in Portuguese, but they're talking about whatever the topic is in Portuguese. So you're not just getting this podcast today, we're going to teach you, this in Portuguese. No, it's everything is in Portuguese. So you have to really learn how to apply it. So if you're learning Portuguese on Duolingo, go listen to a podcast that is talking about Portuguese, everything in Portuguese, whatever. Or a movie in Netflix, or go and write something down. You need to make sure that Duolingo is not just used on your phone. You need to take Duolingo and apply it to real life, because that's really where the real experience is in real life. Duolingo is there as a tool, but you need to take that tool and use it to be able to connect with what's happening in real time. So I hope this is very helpful. Leave comments, let me know if this is helpful, and whatnot. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.